Bryce Laspisa was 19 years old when he vanished, and more than a decade later, no one can say with certainty what happened to him. He was a college student, a son, a friend. To the people who knew him, he was intelligent, artistic, and deeply loved. But in late August 2013, something shifted. Something subtle at first. And then, suddenly, everything changed. Before we go further, if you appreciate calm, detailed, true crime stories told with respect and care, take a moment to subscribe. These stories take time to research and tell properly. And as you're listening, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Cases like this connect people from all over the world. And I always like to know who's here. Bryce was attending Sierra College in Rocklin, California. He had recently moved into an apartment near campus and was preparing to start a new semester. By all appearances, life was moving forward normally. He had a girlfriend. He had classes. He had plans. But in the days leading up to his disappearance, friends noticed something unusual about his behavior. On August 28, 2013, Bryce told his mother, Karen Laspisa, that he was coming home to Laguna Niguel, Southern California. The drive from Rocklin to his parents' home was long, roughly 7 hours. It wasn't a quick trip, but it wasn't unheard of either. What made it strange was what happened next. Instead of heading directly home, Bryce began making stops. His car, a beige 2003 Toyota Highlander, was later tracked moving slowly south. At one point, he pulled over near Buttonwillow, California, and stayed parked for hours. A roadside assistance worker eventually made contact with him after his car reportedly ran out of gas. When the worker spoke to Bryce, he didn't appear intoxicated. He didn't appear injured, but he seemed distant, quiet, not entirely present. Throughout the night and into the next morning, Bryce remained in the same general area. His parents, growing increasingly concerned, stayed in constant contact with him by phone. Each time they asked if he was okay, he said yes. Each time they asked if he was coming home, he said he was on his way, but he wasn't moving. Hours passed, then more hours. Nearly a full day went by with Bryce lingering in one location, sitting inside his vehicle near a rural rest area. When his mother called local law enforcement for a welfare check, an officer located Bryce in his parked SUV. The officer reported that Bryce appeared coherent and sober. He spoke with him briefly and later reassured Karen that her son seemed fine. Bryce told the officer he was just blowing off steam. After that interaction, Bryce finally began driving again. But what happened in the early hours of August 30th would turn a confusing road trip into one of California's most haunting missing person cases. When Bryce's vehicle was discovered wrecked near Castaic Lake, overturned down an embankment off Interstate 5, there was no sign of him inside. The car was there. His wallet was inside. His phone was found. But Bryce Laspisa was gone. And to this day, no confirmed trace of him has ever been found. When daylight broke on August 30th, 2013, the scene near Castaic Lake looked like the aftermath of a violent accident. Bryce's Toyota Highlander had gone off the road near Lake Hughes Road, crashing down a steep embankment before overturning. The vehicle was badly damaged. The rear window was shattered. Personal belongings were scattered inside. But Bryce was not there. Investigators quickly determined that the crash had occurred sometime earlier that morning. Tire marks suggested the vehicle had driven straight through a barricade before plunging down the hill. There were no signs of heavy braking. No indication that he had tried to stop. Inside the SUV, deputies found Bryce's wallet, his laptop, and his cell phone. His glasses were also recovered from the scene. For a 19-year-old who needed them to see clearly, leaving them behind raised immediate concern. Blood was located inside the vehicle, but later analysis revealed it was a very small amount, consistent with minor injury from the crash. It was not evidence of something more violent. Search and rescue teams mobilized quickly. The area surrounding Castaic Lake is rugged, filled with dense brush, steep terrain, and miles of hiking trails. If Bryce had walked away from the crash, he could have gone in any direction. Helicopters scanned the hills. K-9 units tracked scent trails. Divers searched the nearby lake. But once again, there was nothing definitive. The most unsettling detail was timing. Bryce had been less than 2 hours from home when the crash happened. After nearly 24 hours of unexplained stops and strange behavior, he was suddenly close to his parents' house. And then, just as suddenly, he disappeared. His parents arrived at the crash site shortly after being notified. The shock of seeing the destroyed vehicle without their son inside was overwhelming. There was no clear explanation. No note left behind this time. No sign of a struggle. Just a wrecked SUV at the bottom of a hill and a silence that felt heavier than the twisted metal. Investigators began piecing together Bryce's movements in the hours before the crash. Surveillance footage confirmed he had been driving normally earlier that night. Phone records showed he had been in contact with his parents repeatedly during the long, strange delay near Buttonwillow. But there were no final calls. No last message explaining what he intended to do once he reached Castaic. Speculation began almost immediately. Was the crash intentional? Did Bryce walk away disoriented? Did someone encounter him after the accident? The location itself added complexity. Castaic Lake is not isolated in the sense of being unreachable, but it is vast and wild enough that someone could vanish into it. Hikers, campers, and drivers pass through regularly, yet large areas remain difficult to search thoroughly. As days turned into weeks, the search area expanded. Posters with Bryce's face appeared across California. Tips came in from across the country, many of them unverified sightings. Some claimed to have seen a young man matching his description walking along highways. Others believed he may have started a new life somewhere far from home. But none of those leads produced solid proof. Bryce Laspisa had vanished after surviving a crash that should have left him at the scene. And the deeper investigators looked, the more questions surfaced about the strange behavior leading up to that night. Because what happened before the crash may hold the key to everything that followed. In the days after Bryce Laspisa vanished, attention shifted back to the hours before the crash. Because the wrecked SUV told only part of the story. What truly unsettled investigators and his family was Bryce's behavior in the 24 hours leading up to it. Friends later told his parents that Bryce hadn't seemed like himself. He had reportedly given away personal belongings, including a pair of diamond earrings that belonged to his mother. That detail struck hard. It wasn't something he would normally do. It felt deliberate. Final. His girlfriend at the time also told Karen that Bryce had been acting strangely in the days before he left Rockland. He had become distant. Quiet. Not angry. Not panicked. Just different. At one point, she said he broke down emotionally, though he didn't clearly explain why. Despite those warning signs, Bryce never directly told anyone that he was in danger. When his parents spoke to him repeatedly during his long stop near Buttonwillow, he insisted he was fine. Even when an officer physically checked on him and asked if he needed help, Bryce declined. That moment would later haunt his family. If he wasn't under visible distress, what was happening internally? Phone records show that after the welfare check near Buttonwillow, Bryce finally resumed driving south. Instead of continuing steadily home, however, he made several unusual directional changes near Castaic. At one point, he exited the freeway, then re-entered it. It was unclear whether he was confused, stalling, or intentionally circling. Then came the crash. Investigators examined the scene closely. The vehicle had driven through a small dirt access road barrier before going down the embankment. There were no skid marks indicating last-second braking. Some experts suggested the vehicle may have been driven slowly off the incline rather than at full speed. That detail complicated the theory of a simple accident. When the SUV was recovered, the rear window appeared to have been kicked out from the inside. That suggested Bryce may have exited through the back after the vehicle overturned. If that was the case, he survived the crash. He was conscious. He left on his own. But where did he go? Tracking dogs followed his scent from the vehicle to a nearby truck stop, and then it disappeared. It simply stopped. That could mean he entered another vehicle. It could mean environmental factors disrupted the trail. Or it could mean something else entirely. The lake was searched extensively. Divers combed the water. Helicopters scanned the terrain. Volunteers searched hiking trails and canyon paths. No clothing. No remains. No confirmed sightings in the immediate aftermath. One of the most unsettling elements of Bryce's disappearance is the lack of physical evidence. There is no crime scene, no confirmed foul play, no definitive proof of self-harm, just a destroyed vehicle and a young man who walked away from it into darkness. His parents have remained vocal and persistent in keeping his case alive. They have publicly expressed belief that Bryce may still be alive somewhere, possibly suffering from memory loss or mental health struggles. Over the years, there have been reported sightings in different states, but none have been conclusively verified. The question that continues to echo is simple. What was Bryce thinking during those silent hours on the side of the road? Because whatever was happening inside his mind may explain why a 19-year-old college student drove almost 7 hours home, only to disappear less than 2 hours away. And the longer the silence continues, the more this case shifts from confusion to something far more haunting. As the months pass, Bryce Laspisa's disappearance settled into that uneasy category investigators know too well. Active, but without direction. There was no confirmed crime scene, no suspect, no body, no final message explaining what happened after he stepped away from his overturned SUV near Castaic Lake. Search efforts gradually slowed, but they never fully stopped. Volunteers returned to the area repeatedly over the years, walking the same rugged terrain, hoping something had been missed. The hills surrounding Castaic are steep and covered in thick brush. Certain sections are difficult to navigate even in daylight. It's a place where visibility drops quickly and where a person could, in theory, go unseen. Authorities explored multiple possibilities. One theory suggested Bryce may have suffered a head injury during the crash, leaving him disoriented and vulnerable to the elements. Another possibility was that he intentionally walked away, either to harm himself or to start over somewhere new. There was also the lingering question of whether someone encountered him after the crash and offered a ride, or something else. The scent trail leading to the truck stop continued to puzzle investigators. If Bryce reached that location and entered another vehicle, it would explain why no further physical evidence was found in the immediate area. But no surveillance footage ever surfaced confirming that scenario. No witnesses came forward with a definitive account. What made the case even more complicated was Bryce's state of mind before he left Rockland. Reports indicated he may have experimented with substances in the days prior to his disappearance. Some friends suggested he seemed emotionally overwhelmed, possibly struggling internally in ways he hadn't fully expressed. Yet when authorities spoke to him during the welfare check near Buttonwillow, he appeared calm and coherent. That contradiction remains one of the case's greatest mysteries. How could someone appear stable to an officer one moment, then vanish hours later, without explanation? Over the years, sightings of Bryce have been reported in California and beyond. Some callers claim to have seen a young man resembling him walking along highways or living transiently. Each tip was investigated. None were confirmed. For his parents, Karen and Mike Laspisa, time has not dulled the urgency. They have continued to advocate for renewed searches and media attention. They have held on to hope, even as the years stretch further from that August night in 2013. Without definitive evidence of death, they have chosen to believe their son could still be out there. Bryce Laspisa's case remains officially unsolved. A crashed vehicle, personal belongings left behind, a scent trail that stops abruptly, and a 19-year-old who simply disappeared. The silence surrounding what happened after he walked away from that SUV has now lasted longer than the life he lived before it. More than a decade has passed since Bryce Laspisa stepped away from his overturned SUV near Castaic Lake and vanished into the early morning darkness. There has been no confirmed sighting, no verified contact, no physical evidence explaining what happened after he left that crash site. What remains is a timeline filled with strange pauses and unanswered questions. A young man who drove nearly 7 hours home, but stopped for hours in the middle of nowhere. A welfare check where he appeared calm, yet something was clearly not right. A crash with no skid marks, and a rear window kicked out from the inside. A scent trail that led to truck stop, and then simply ended. For his parents, the uncertainty has been the hardest part. Without proof of death, there's always hope. And hope, while powerful, can also be heavy. They have continued to speak publicly about Bryce's case, urging anyone with information to come forward. They have kept his name in circulation, refusing to let time turn him into just another unsolved statistic. Cases like Bryce's sit in a difficult space. There is no confirmed crime, no clear evidence of self-harm, no body recovered, just a series of events that don't quite fit together. And because of that, the case remains open, active, waiting. If Bryce survived the crash and walked away, where did he go? Did someone pick him up? Was he disoriented? Did he intend to disappear? Or is the answer still somewhere in the hills surrounding Castaic Lake, hidden in terrain that has already been searched more than once? The truth is, until new evidence surfaces, Bryce Laspisa's disappearance remains one of California's most haunting unsolved mysteries. If this story stayed with you, take a moment to like the video. It helps more people discover cases that still need answers. Subscribe if you want more detailed, respectful true crime stories like this one. And I want to hear from you. What theory do you believe makes the most sense in this case? Do you think Bryce is still alive somewhere, or do you believe the answer lies closer to that crash site? Share your thoughts below, and tell me where you're watching from. Thank you for being here.